My husband left me for another woman, so I served him divorce papers at his job the day before he returned. I 59F was married to my now ex, 57M, we'll call him Eid for 10 years, together for 13, but originally met him 40 years ago as teenagers. He was in my circle of friends, but we never dated. We used to live in Florida, but when I was 19, I moved back to Michigan where I am originally from. 27 years later, I went back to the city in Florida where I used to live to visit friends. I ran into Eid while on vacation and we began talking on the phone daily. 3 months later, he left Florida and moved in with me. 3 years later, we were married. Not my first, but his first. We had our ups and downs, but mainly we got along fine and didn't argue much. He would throw tantrums if things didn't go his way and would punish me by sleeping on the edge of the bed, which was fine with me, or he would not talk to me and slam things. 2 years into our marriage, things went horribly wrong when he got into drugs. It was horrible. One night I finally had enough and was on the phone with my mill telling her I was sending back to Florida when the sheriff's department knocked on my door. Someone had found my husband unconscious, severely beaten, in a ditch a block from our house. We lived in a small village with woods across the street. I raced to the hospital and didn't recognize him when I saw him. He was so swollen and bruised. Now my husband was a man who could fight and he was strong. Come to find out, it took 3 men to do this. They thought they could rob him since it was payday, but he had been home and purposely left his wallet at home. I sat with him 24/7 while he was in neuro/trauma ICU. I slept on a couch in his room, I prayed over him, I bathed him and took care of him even after he came home. This actually saved his life. He got clean and went back to work full-time, always putting me and my grandson first before his needs. He went to work and came home, that's it. 4 years later, I finished my education and became an ordained priest and have been the pastor at my church ever since. At first he didn't mind, but then he would say things like, I didn't sign up for this, even though I never pushed church on him. I knew he believed in God and he prayed daily. I would invite him to Christmas and Easter service, and he also came when I ordained, and when my grandson, who calls him Grandpa, was baptized. For several years things were really good. Then suddenly he began coming home from work, showering, changing clothes, and leaving. At first he said it was to watch whatever sports was playing on TV because we didn't have live TV. Then he told me he'd be back whenever he got back. Then, things went back to how they were. We laughed a lot, we joked around, and I began getting the usual kiss goodbye before he left for work. One night, he had done his laundry, like he always did, and I talked to him while he was folding it. He never wanted me to do his laundry, so that wasn't new. We ended the night laughing as he was trying on old clothes. The next morning I woke up and went out to the living room to ask what time he had to be at work, but he was gone. I assumed he had to be there early. I walked back into the bedroom and saw his keys on the bed, which made me wonder why he would walk to work on such a cold day. It was December 1st. I started leaving the bedroom again and noticed his laundry basket missing, so I went to the laundry room and it wasn't there. I went back into the bedroom and noticed his closet empty. I called him to see where he was and asked if he had moved out, and of course his answer was yes. Come to find out, he had met a woman at his job who works for one of those shopping apps where people buy and deliver your groceries. He worked for a large grocery store chain, he had moved in with her. Over the next 6 months he called almost daily and would say things like, our marriage will survive this, just give me time. He even told me he would be mad if I began dating. During one of our phone calls he told me he wasn't happy with her and was going down to Florida to visit family. He said he wanted to come back to me when he came back to Michigan. The plan was this. He would pack things that he couldn't live without but leave things at his new GF's house to make her think he was coming home to her. He planned on giving his 2-week notice while gone and planned on looking for another job when he came home. By this time I knew I didn't want him back. I found my self-worth again and had made new friends with neighbors once he was gone. Come to find out, nobody liked him. Even the women at the gas station across the street told me how he flirted with them when he came in. Even an elder at my church found out he was cheating but didn't tell me because she didn't want to hurt me. So I went to the courthouse and got a divorce package and filled out all of the paperwork. Where I live, I was able to serve him myself. I decided that since he chose to end our marriage while working at the store, I would officially end it there. So the day before he was supposed to fly to Florida, I made sure I looked really good. New hairstyle, makeup, and my outfit was sexy. I went to his job, found him, and handed him the divorce papers. I told him that he was wrong. Our marriage wasn't surviving this. You should have seen his face. He was actually upset with tears in his eyes, and for a moment I felt bad. Then I reminded myself what he had done to me. He didn't just leave me in the middle of the night, but he stopped talking and doing things with my grandson who thought grandpa was the greatest. He left me in a house that I couldn't afford without him, and I would have been homeless if my church wouldn't have paid for an apartment. He told me women were stupid. He actually thought he could come home as if nothing happened. That was one thing he said to me on the phone because I never brought up the past. Last week, 6 months after our divorce was final, my car was repossessed. When we were together, he got 2 loans, and I agreed to use my SUV as collateral because I never pictured my life without him. He stopped paying on his loans, so they took my car. I wasn't notified because they sent him the letters. They wanted me to pay off his loans to get it back. I burst out laughing and said that will never happen. So my question is, was I the AH for serving him the way I did? Update, thank you for the comments and support. Here's a reminder of what happened. My now ex-husband got a loan while we were married and used my car as collateral. A year later, he left me for someone he met at work. He kept telling me that our marriage would survive, just give him time. He ended up not being happy with her and planned to come back to me after he left to visit his family out of state. He planned on not telling his GF he was leaving her and was only packing what he couldn't live without. His plan was to return home to me when he came home. The day before he left to visit family, I served him with divorce papers. 2 weeks ago my car was repossessed, and the bank wanted me to pay my car off $3,000 and his 2 loans that he stopped paying on, $5,700. I was willing to pay my car off, but told them I'd never pay for his loans, and they refused. Here's what happened since my post. I found out where my car was being held at. 2 cities away. When I went to their website, I discovered that it's also the location where they sell the repossessed cars during an online auction. They hold it every Monday for 24 hours. I called and asked if I could have my belongings out of it, and they said yes. When I arrived, they had my things in a bag, including my license plate. I registered online, and this past Monday began bidding on my car. I ended up buying my car for $2,700. When I showed up to get my car, the people laughed and said I'm not the first person to do this. I put my plate back on and came home. Now, I know the bank can still come after me for the balance, but I honestly don't care if it hits my credit report. I don't use credit cards, and in October my daughter closed on a brand new house. I had no other bills except my cell and utilities. I'm now living with her and my grandson. I was lucky enough to have enough time in to retire when my muscular dystrophy began causing more health issues, and that money goes to my other bank. My mill was happy to give me his new address, so I can sue my ex for my half of our income tax return that he kept last year. She's even having us, me, daughter, grandson, stay with her when we visit Florida during my grandson's spring break. She's still calling Eads GF Teresa, Trina, Tracy, everything except her name, which does start with the letter T. I love this woman. AITA for serving divorce papers to my ex at his job, the day before he thought he was coming back home. Commenter, NTA, but why did you wait 6 months to divorce him when he left you for another woman? Op reply. My health prevented me for most of the time. I was in the hospital 31 days and then had to get my strength back. Plus, I didn't want to explain I was getting divorced again, but mostly my health.